Alright, Akim, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Hawashai, Ba'ashem Rakak Wadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of our great millstone for teaching us his truth. Salutations to the sincere Akim and Aquath. They may listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Raquai. I'm back in here with another quick and Lord's will, as always, an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I just wanted to go through I won't go through the whole chapter, but I wanted to go through a little bit about King Manasseh. And he was a king that ruled over essentially the southern kingdom after his father, King Hezekiah, right? And as a matter of fact, let me just jump right into it. Nothing I want to touch on too specific, but I just wanted to go through something interesting, I guess, contrasts the righteous kings, because even though you can always learn from the habits and the ways and of some of the things that our righteous forefathers did, you can also understand, okay, these are some of the things why the Lord was upset with us, through examples of our forefathers, right? So there's still learning lessons in some of the things that they did, right? So this being one primary example, known as King Manasseh, excuse me. Let me start off with this precept here before I jump right into the chapter, because there's always material you can always learn from them. Romans 15 verse 4, and it says, "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope," right? So that's the importance here, that we actually have comfort, we actually have a reference, a guide of things to do and things of what not to do, right? And we have living examples, right? And we're going through, and this is why it's so good to go through some of the essentially the ways of old, because some of the thing, a lot of the things that our people don't do, a lot of our people don't essentially look back enough and go back into, the ways of their forefathers, right? And actually understand some of the things that they did or some of the things that they didn't do, right? How to actually move forward, right? Because our people are so destroyed for lack of knowledge. They don't actually have essentially a guide, right? And this is what the scriptures God offers us. It's offering a guide, right, in this system of darkness, so to speak, right? Because we're living in a time of gross darkness, the people, right? So anyways, let me jump right into the account. Actually, get it in the NIV. No, that's not it. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, this is 2 Kings 21. I'll start at verse 1, and it says, "Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. His mother's name was Hezekiah. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord Yahweh, Ba'ashem Hawashai, following the detestable practices of the nations of the Lord had driven out before the Israelites," right? So, two things I just wanted to touch on here. One of the things here is so important is that, when you go through the life of essentially King Hezekiah, King Hezekiah was a very essentially a righteous king, right? And, us being in that state, like I'm not personally, I don't have any children, but, to say that, one of the things that is so important, like as we, learn and rehearse the righteous acts, you actually pass that, essentially, we pass that vibration onto our children, right? Because we live in a society, for example, where our children are essentially learning the ways of Satan. They're learning the ways of death. They're learning things that are very profane. For example, you have a lot of parents, like essentially in an uproar because their children are learning that alphabet lifestyle, for example. That's just one of, out of many examples, right? And they're pushing that vibration, and they have these hideous creatures coming into the school boards, known as drag queens, and having them read story time, and having them learn very perverse things and twerking and so on and so forth. Like, these ways are not conducive, and these things are not actually uphold a righteous vibration. They uphold a very negative and wicked vibration, right? So let me get two precepts. I didn't have this written down in my book here, but just bear with me. Let me just get two precepts on what I was just talking about. Okay, this is Proverbs 22:6, and it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." In the NLT, it says, "Direct your children in the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it," right? So this is, essentially a proper way to actually raise your children. Our children are not supposed to essentially learn these detestable practices that make Yahweh Bashim Shai kind of turn their faces from us, right? Because because we live in a time where essentially Esau puts out all this wicked vibrations on the TV, whether it's in music, whether it's in movies, all these different avenues that things our children, your smartphone, the cartoons, they're pushing that, hidden sodomite agenda, all these in different covert ways, right? That's actually being essentially it's being what's the word I'm looking for? It's not healthy, essentially, for your children. It's not healthy for us Israelites, because that's not the way for us to actually live our lives. That is a way of that promotes death. Scriptures say that the wages of sin is death, right? So that's one thing I just wanted to point out. And another thing about the importance of training up a child in the ways and the statutes of the laws and the commandments and so on and so forth is that, our children need to understand that they are essentially you're of a particular bloodline, right? And a bloodline that is holy and that is upright, right? And this is the wisdom, like it says in Deuteronomy, this is our wisdom in the sight of these other nations, right? Because these other nations are supposed to essentially learn from us, So, so that's one thing, that's one point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to make, and the point escapes me. Hopefully it comes back. Right? Oh, detestable practices, right? So let's get that in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 7:1, and it says, "When the Lord thy power shall bring thee into the land, whither ye go to possess it, that ye cast out the many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. When the Lord thy power shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them, and make no covenant with them, neither show any mercy unto them, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son." And this is the key point here. This is verse 4. It says, "For they will turn away thy son from following me," right? And this is what happens to our nation. Our minds as Israelites have been turned away from Yahweh Bashim Shai, right? We're not even supposed to be surrounded by these heathens, right? But this is the condition of what we're in. and this is the condition, and you see the detestable practices that our people are really into because we're mingling with the heathen. We're making essentially, marriages, with these heathens and so on and so forth. And then what happens, for example, when you see like a so-called black man, this is a very common thing. A lot of so-called black men, they marry, for example, like Japanese and so-called Japanese and Chinese and all these different women from these other nations, and essentially they don't have an understanding and a guide of how to raise their children, right? So what happens is you have a child that doesn't understand fully who they are. They may get ridiculed in school because the father is not he's not so well in the head, so the father is trying to kind of be some half-ass kind of guy to be just be super candid, right? Because the father doesn't fully know who he is, because he doesn't he's not in the mindset of serving Yahweh Bashem Shai, right? So this is why it's so important for starting foremost with essentially the men to turn back to the Lord, right? So this, because it promotes essentially nationhood, the man being in tune with his power, right, and how to forward that vibration onto his woman and his children, right? Verse 4 again, it says, "For they will turn away thy son from following me, and that they may serve other gods." And this is an example of what you see here, right? So, you have a king that's essentially, his mind is turned away from the ways of Yahweh Bashem Shai, right? So, and that anger of the Lord was kindled, right? So it says here, "So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you, and destroyed thee utterly," right? Because and this is something that we can also learn from going back into the ways of old, because essentially what a good king would do is, well, one, go back into the ways of old, right? Because this particular king here, as an example, one of the things that he should have done is, okay, man, this is what this king did, this is what that king did, because if you get going back into the ways of old, you would learn that, oh man, King Solomon, when he got to a certain age, his mind began to turn away from the Lord, right? And what happened? He began to make all these different, essentially altars for these different gods from the different concubines that he had, and so on and so forth, right? So his mind essentially was turned away, right? So that was a lot, but hopefully all this is piecing together and making sense. So I'll read a little bit more, and I'll get a couple more precepts because I don't want to make the lesson too long. So it says, so just going into some of the practices that he did, he says, verse 3, "He built high places his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He also erected altars to Baal, made an Asherah pole, as Ahab, king of Israel, had done. He bowed down to all the starry hosts and worshipped them. He built altars in the temple of the Lord, which the temple of the Lord had said, of which the Lord hath said in Jerusalem, I will put my name. In the two courts of the temple of the Lord, he built altars to all the starry hosts. He sacrificed his own son." This is another thing too, and why the Lord's anger was kindled. He sacrificed his own son in the fire, practiced divination, sought omens, consulted mediums, and spiritualists. Sorry, that says spiritists. Just make sure. Let me see what that says in the KJV. That was verse 6. Okay, so it says familiar spirits and wizards, right? So, and again, this is why we go back into the records and of old time, because this is one of the things that King Saul did as well. When you go back into during his reign, right? And that, that also was something that we're not. That's something also that we're not supposed to do. So let me get Leviticus. I think it's 18. Okay, this is Leviticus 18, verse 21, and it says, "And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither thou shalt profane the name of the Lord. I am name of thy power. I am the Lord." It says in the NLT, "Do not permit any of your children to be offered as a sacrifice to Molech, for you must not bring a shame unto your power. I am the Lord Yahweh." Right? And that's very important, right? Because these detestable practices are occurring under a king, and a king is supposed to essentially, be in an upright manner, be, forwarding essentially the practices and the ways and of Yahweh Bashim Shai, of righteousness, right? This is why it's so important to essentially, be under a wise king, right? And you can even draw some parallels between King Manasseh and some of the wickedness that he was doing during his reign, right? And even Esau today, because this practice that I'm just reading, offering your seed, you know, it what it does is it comes under essentially a wicked vibration, and this is something that Esau allows in this society, right? And they push this heavy amongst our people, like specifically amongst our people, and that's through an organization known as Planned Parenthood, right? So, the point really is, this is why it's so important to essentially be under a wise king, right? Let me get that. Just bear with me 1 second. This is Sirach chapter 10, verse 1, and it says, "A wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers, and what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein." Verse 3, and here's the point: "An unwise king destroyeth his people, but the prudence of them which are in authority of the city shall be inhabited," right? So this is why it's so important to, when you see under a wise king is supposed to properly essentially instruct, their people in righteousness, right? And you can even say that about Esau as well, because Esau, it runs under the vibration of an unwise king, not a wise king, right? Because he allows these particular wicked vibrations to run rampant, throughout his society. And this is why a lot of our people are so messed up, right? Because they're taking on that vibration of the things that he allows in the society. Another thing is the, going back to the alphabet agenda. This is something that he allows in this society, and it's propped up as something good. Scriptures talk about essentially, "Woe unto him that do sweet for bitter and bitter for sweet," to roughly paraphrase, right? So let me get, okay, so I just wanted to get this quick here. This is Deuteronomy 17. I'll start at verse 14, and it says, so this is some of the, the good character, not, I don't want to say character traits, but essentially good character traits of a good king, of the things a king should be doing, right? So it says, verse 14, and it says, "When thou art come into the land, unto the land which the Lord thy power giveth thee, and thou shalt possess it, and shalt dwell therein, shall say, I will set a king over me, like as all the nations that are around me. Thou shalt in any wise, thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord thy power shall choose, one from among thy brethren, because we were talking about Esau earlier. It says, shalt thou set a king over thee? Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother. Right? So we're not supposed to have like a heathen king, ruling over us, but we're in captivity, right? So it says, but he shall not multiply horses unto himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt, to the end that he should multiply horses. For as much as the Lord hath said unto you, ye shall henceforth return no more that way. Neither shall he multiply wives unto himself, that his heart turn not away. So previously we were just talking about Solomon, right? And this is the exact same thing that happened with King Solomon. His heart got turned away from the Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. So it says, neither shall he greatly multiply himself silver and gold. It shall be when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in the book, out of which is before the priest the Levites. Verse 19, it says, it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life, which he may learn to fear the Lord his power, and keep all the words of this law and these statutes, and do them. Right? So this is very, very important, because one, we don't actually have a king ruling over us as a nation, actually performing these particular practices, because they're heathens. They're not going to do this. They don't actually exemplify and uphold a standard that fears the Lord, because the spirit of Esau is not a spirit of uprightness, it's a spirit of wickedness, right? So it causes our people to err, right? But likely you can also say the same about King Manasseh, because during his reign, this is something that he didn't do. We're not, we learned that, through his rulership, through his reign, he's supposed to, impart this understanding throughout the people, the population. They're supposed to know these particular things and do them, right? So this is why we know one of the things that we hope for and we want is to have essentially new heavens and a new earth that dwells in righteousness, right? Because we live in a system that promotes and perpetuates wickedness, wicked vibrations, death, destruction. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn, right? So this is a state and a kingdom that is mourning and is crumbling before our eyes, right? So, I guess I'll just leave it off there. I didn't get through so much of it. I'll probably just do a second part to it. But, it's always good to go through these accounts and so on and so forth, right? To learn of these different ways. As a matter of fact, let me close off with this precept here. This is one of my favorites. It says, Proverbs 25 verse 2, and it says, it is the glory of the Most High Yahweh to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter, right? So we're searching out, the ways of our forefathers, the things that, that made them pleasing or displeasing, so we can remain in good graces with your Heavenly Father, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, right? So, anyways, Lord's will, this lesson was edifying. I'd just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Until next time, I say, Shalom.